Hello and welcome to Camp Xbox, where we talk about all things Xbox, new and old. And on today's agenda is a review of Condemned 2 Bloodshot. Condemned 2 is a sequel game to Condemned, which was an Xbox 360 launch title exclusive. Both games are psychological horror games where you play the character Ethan Thomas, who is a detective trying to take down serial killer X. Now, I haven't spoken about the first game here, but I do love that game. I actually think Condemned 1 is one of the best games from the Xbox launch library, and I can't wait to talk about it. But recently, I did play Condemned 2, which I've never gotten around to trying out. And Condemned 2 is surprisingly different than its first game, still holding some of what makes it Condemned, but I don't think it quite reaches the heights of the original, but should be played. This game was published by Sega, but developed by Monolith Studios, which you might know as the team that brings us those Middle-earth games most recently, but they also brought us Fear 1 and 2. So there was a period of time where they really honed in on making survival horror games like this one. But Condemned 2 is definitely them trying to break the mold and try something completely different. They tried to open it up to a much wider audience, where the first one was an exclusive to the 360. This one also came out on PlayStation 3. It also offered a multiplayer game, and it just tried its best to do a lot of different things. And I think some of it does stick. So in the original game, you had a selection of melee weapons that you could use, and that's mainly what you used for combat. And you do have that here, but I guess in between the time of the first game and this one, the character Ethan Thomas has kind of honed his fighting skills, doing back alley brawls, stuff like that, because at the end of the last game, he was a damaged man and has turned to alcoholism. And in this time, though, he has honed his fist fighting skills, and you really can feel that in this game. You have blocking, left punch, right punch, combos you can do, and it's not just a simple beat 'em up style. It is first person, almost strategical fighting. These fist fights are going to take you a little bit. They are not really fast. You don't move from enemy to enemy. You have to take your time and really think about it. And I like that about this. I've never really played anything quite like that does this. And the single player itself, where you move from different locations that are, I don't want to say haunted, but they feel haunted by the murders that serial killer X and other people have gone through. Because this game isn't just about serial killer X anymore. You're not just hunting down one serial killer. It's the whole town that is going downhill. There's these weird signal frequencies that is just causing people to go crazy and murder. And you kind of delve into that as you go. Now, do I really like this story? Not particularly, especially when compared to the first one. I really like the more grounded serial killer view of the first one. It's a lot more brutal, and this one really tries to be gritty and brutal, but I found that the story was just a little too out there and just not great. I think when you get to those final stages of the story and you get into all the traitor stuff, it starts to lay into some tropes that you'll see a lot in gaming, and it just wasn't all that great. And that first game has some great scary moments, but never really was all that scared in this one. Not to say that graphically or atmospherically this game doesn't work, because it does. I think graphically everything has this weird texture to it. It's very dark and gray, but and I know that's a big complaint of this era of gaming, but it works for this game as far as tone goes. There are some levels that I didn't really like a bowling alley level or a lodge that you have to explore and find bombs in. It just doesn't click quite like the first one, where the first one, every location was gross and scary. This one only has some of those moments, and one time where it's the best, when you go to the school, well, that's just a level from the first game, so no wonder it works so well. Now, on its own, if you were just to play this without Condemned 1, without the comparisons, I think you still would have that click that you'd want from a horror game. It never really is all that freaky. But it's still good. It's still a lot of fun and definitely unique for the Xbox 360. I think what you're going to get out of this is a really different experience, especially with its melee combat and its dark story. Compared to the first one, I don't think there's that many games that are willing to get this brutal, especially in its investigation sequences where you see a lot of murder and decapitated bodies. If you're into dark imagery like that, these are one of the few times you can really get this on this generation of gaming, and even to this day, really. Though what this game lacks in scares and grit, I think there is an argument to be made that it is a lot of fun. The melee combat just feels so deep and so good to play. I didn't mind fighting every enemy with no melee weapons or maybe firearms. I just wanted to get the right punches in, the right hooks, the right counterattacks to bring it all together. And there's these really great combos that you can do, and you can do kicks. It is absolutely insane that they chose to do this, but I think they totally paid off with it. It is so much fun to do this. The level design is pretty solid for most of the game. There's some fun little collectibles. It's the collectibles I like, that when you pick them up in game, they add to the story with either a video or some audio. It's very commonplace at the time, but I do think that it works really well. Now, this game coming out in 2008, we do kind of have to transport ourselves back with these retro games, right? You have to kind of know when it came out and appreciate it based on its time, place, but you can also appreciate it if you think it still holds up to this day. I don't think Condemned 2, holds up like a crazy amount, but for its time, I think it's very interesting. One of the things that I like to think about this era of 2008 was a lot of games that had multiplayer and didn't need it, had it. So yes, Condemned 2 has a multiplayer mode, and that was a huge thing. I've been looking online at old reviews and everything. People were so upset about how unnecessary the multiplayer was here. And this is in a time where if you released an online-only game, it was a little iffy. You really wanted that single-player experience to be the forefront. But honestly, I find this era of gaming so interesting because a lot of these games that don't need multiplayer game modes, they sometimes came out with some really interesting stuff. And in Condemned 2, unfortunately, the servers are still up, but unfortunately, not a lot of people play anymore. And of course, nobody's really going back to this one. It's not backwards compatible or anything. But surprisingly, I just searched for a lobby online and I found someone when I was playing, and it was a total surprise to me. I put it on as a joke. I was like, oh yeah, let's see if anybody's playing. Yeah, somebody was playing, and I got to play one game mode, and it was Crime Scene, where it is SCU, which are the agents in the game, versus just your serial killers. And you have to find evidence as the cops, and as the serial killers, you have to hide the evidence. And it's like a standoff mode where you die once and you're dead for the rest of the game, and you just gotta hope that you hid your evidence well enough that the cops can't find it. And the game maps I've learned are really tight hallways, really small, and it's really intimate. I really liked it. And I'm playing in the most limited way possible, which is just playing with one other person, but I think I played for like an hour and a half just testing this stuff out, really trying it. It was more like, okay, for my review, I can actually do something about the multiplayer, but I also was having a really good time with it, and it's really interesting that the multiplayer, they found a way to kind of make a turn on it. And there are deathmatch modes where you just kill people on different teams, but there's something interesting with this crime scene mode and this mode called Bum Rush that sounds different than something I've ever seen. So there definitely was something here. There was something with the multiplayer that I think was really cool, and hey, I had a good time with it. So if you're able to somehow find multiple people with copies of Condemned 2 and they want to play on their Xbox 360 or PS3, I say give it a shot. It's pretty cool, and there are plenty of multiplayer achievements to get. Speaking of achievements, I did not get them 100% because there are some grinding ones for multiplayer, like getting 1,000 kills. But single player achievements, it's just for playing on hardest difficulty and getting gold medals in every level, which you might as well do anyway, just for finding every collectible, because you get upgrades like an RPG for each level, and I think that's really fun. Nothing too crazy on the achievement front. But overall, Condemned 2 is a very interesting and different game. It's very different from the first one, and it kind of stands in a league of its own, and I really appreciate it for it. Now, like I keep saying, it kind of pales in comparison to its original, but I just really like that they kind of took a different turn for it. The multiplayer's fun, the melee combat is really good. It feels like they really captured something here. And reading from developers, it looks like the team was split from making multiplayer and single player, and they wish that they were able to get a little more time. And I really think with more time, this could have been polished in a really, really good game. But if we looked at my ranked list, I do only have 5 games as of this moment, but it is ranked at number 4. Halo Wars, I find, is to be, it's a good game. It's very polished, but this game is very, very much better than Dark Void. And I think it'll raise up in these rankings, and stuff will go under it over time, because Condemned 2 is really interesting. I actually highly recommend this in the first game. And luckily, Condemned 2 you can play on not only the 360 but the PS3, and I don't think it's that expensive of a game. Give it a shot. It's a really neat experience, and I highly recommend it, actually, even with all of its shortcomings. But if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. It does help the channel, same with commenting. So if you enjoyed the video, or if you played this game, or you're interested, please put that down below, because I honestly would love to hear from you. And I'll catch you here next time at Camp Xbox.